Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, Scaling Climate Tech, we are speaking with Ted Persson, partner at EQT Ventures and one of the instigators of the Climage Brick, a new framework to fast-track climate tech. We talk about why climate tech needs a different approach to investing and scaling than traditional software companies. We go through the several bricks in the Climage Brick program, including green deployment, product disruption, and moonshots. And we also get into how AI will change creativity. My name is Konrad, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind. All right, folks, this was a good one. Ted Persson has been on the show before to talk about deep tech. It was a couple of years ago, but you can scroll back in the feed and hear his interview there. I really enjoyed Ted's perspective of things. I think he's one of the most interesting personalities in the kind of tech and VC space. He also has a very interesting background because he comes from kind of the creative sector. He used to run a creative agency called Great Works before he ventured into VC investing. Ted Persson also plays a role in many of the companies and entrepreneurs that we've been writing and speaking to in the Scandinavian Mind universe, including Joel Hellermark, the founder of Sana, and Olof Lind, founder of Kive. Speaking of Kive, we did have Olof Lind on stage at the Virtual Creativity Live event, the last one in this series, the fifth and last one we've done this autumn-winter season with Link & Co. at their showroom in Stockholm. If you want to catch that episode, just stay tuned and subscribe to this feed. You'll hear that conversation in a couple of weeks' time. In other news, we are going full speed ahead planning the upcoming season of Transformation Conference. I've been writing about this in my column, talking about it here on the podcast. First out is Helsinki, now end of May. For anyone who's in Helsinki during the Fashion in Helsinki days, do reach out. I'd love to hook up and talk. We are also planning sessions for Copenhagen, doing Copenhagen Fashion Week in collaboration with SIF, as well as our big event in Stockholm together with Stockholm Fashion District. If you or your company wants to collaborate, be a speaker, be a partner of the event, do reach out as we are planning this right now. You can just email me at konrad@scandinavianmind.com. And don't forget to sign up to our newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletters to find all our weekly newsletters with all the content that can be viewed on our new wonderfully designed website by our creative director Erik Olofsson. All right, now my conversation with Ted Persson, partner at EQT Ventures. Enjoy. All right, I'm here with Ted Persson, partner at EQT Ventures and one of the instigators of the Climage Brick, a new framework to fast-track climate tech. How are you, Ted?
I'm pretty good. It's always you have like a day job, which is investing, and then we've created this startup within the job, which is this Climage Brick thing. So yeah, 2 jobs.
Yeah, I want to get into that, and let's start with Climage Brick, and then maybe we can zoom out to talk about your day job and see what's happening there. But let's get into it. What is Climage Brick, and why is it necessary right now, do you think?
So the Climage Brick is basically a manual or a formula for climate tech scaling. And there are many different facets around this. There's one facet for investors, such as ourselves. Another one could be the facet of the founder, capital providers, policymakers. So basically, an attempt to get everyone around the climate tech table to agree on what the journey looks like.
And you kind of contrast this when you describe it in the material I've been sent, that there is a kind of a traditional way of looking at investments when you look at, I don't know, SaaS tools or, traditional kind of tech innovations that have happened the past, I guess, 10, 15 years or so. But for climate tech, you need a different approach. How would you contrast these two with each other?
No, I think you're right. I mean, if you look at the software paradigm that got going in this modern incarnation sometime in the mid 90s with the birth of the web, since then a standard has been developed organically by the ecosystem. So now everyone knows what a seed round is, and an A round is, and a B round is, and everyone knows that investors such as ourselves, we back a founding team, and we get 10, 15, 20%, and then we do everything we can to support and so forth. But in the beginning of the web, those things were not obvious. In some ways, it was about replacing the CEO. Some companies or some investors wanted more than 50%. But then over time, this formula, in a way, this standard was set. And within climate tech, we're kind of in a similar state or stage as in the beginning of the software and the web era. The standards are not there, and the formula is not really kind of identified or agreed upon. So we felt that as someone who meets, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 startups every day, a lot of time goes into just agreeing on the basics. So we said, what if we could create some initiative where we would agree on what a seed round is, an A round is, a B round is, what the formula is. So we can spend, that 20% of the time to build the companies instead of convincing boring investors like myself what is needed for the different phases.
Don't call yourself boring. I think this is very, very exciting stuff. But talk about the I guess the roadmap is different then, and maybe we should try to just define what you mean by climate tech to begin with. So speaking about defining things, how do you define climate tech?
The definition is, or the way we look at climate tech is that there is, of course, when you look at a scaling journey, there are the commercials and kind of monetary milestones, but there are secondary or other KPIs on the same level, which are around impact. And that impact can be savings of greenhouse gas emissions, could be life saved, could be whatever impact metric that you have. But basically, if you remove that component from the company could not exist. It's like an integral part of the formation of the company. And what we did here was that we conducted together with EQT Ventures, Konrad Ventures, the two initiators of this project, and then we onboarded a lot of other both investors and founders and so forth. And then McKinsey helped out as well to conduct what probably is the largest study of climate tech companies to date. So we analyzed more than 3,000 companies to try to figure out what a successful journey looks like.
Let's get into details. What is that journey, and how does it differ from the software companies we talked about before? But I'm guessing the timelines are different, for instance.
So we analyzed 3,000 companies, and the idea from the beginning was to try to create one archetypical journey. And then we realized pretty quickly that it's not that simple. In software, you can say, right. Software service, you can say it's like one journey, and maybe for marketplaces there's another. But for climate tech, we ended up with 7 different journeys, and they're to some extent pretty similar. They have resemblance, but they're also distinct differences. So the 7 journeys, I can just mention them roughly, but they're some of them define how to build factories or plants. We call that journey that big gigascale. We have one which is about deploying or installing green deployment. So could be solar, could be heat pumps that we call green deployment. There's one called asset as a service, where you take some type of climate-related hardware like a truck or a scooter or something and deploying it as a service. There's one called product disruption, which is where all the electric vehicles, both cars and trucks and flying vehicles, live. We have one called new technology, which is basically assembling or looking at cases where there's either foundational disruptive technology at play or process improvements at play. And here we have, for instance, Climeworks with direct air capture, but we also have a lot of the new food alternatives like cultured meat and so forth. And then out of that brick, in the last month we spun out another brick we call Moonshots, which is where we have companies that resemble the new technology companies, but they have some type of technology risk that is not kind of taken care of just yet. So here we have quantum computing, fusion energy, and the last one is called Companion Software, which is in the borderland between climate hardware and software. So that one resembles the software journey to a large extent. And you asked before, what is different? I would say that one big unlock here, and we have critical unlocks for each of these bricks, but one unlock here is to, as quickly as possible, de-risk the case, get LOIs, and then you convert those LOIs to real hard offtake agreements. Basically, locking in.
Explain LOIs. I know you have in your deck. There's a wonderful thesaurus, the dictionary in the beginning, because of all these terms that you guys use.
Absolutely. But if you look at, for instance, and you can do this if you want to now here, you can follow along just like like in one of those audio books. If you go to climagebrick.com, you find the giga scaling brick and you look at that one, for instance, and you will see in the top you have a nice descriptor for each phase. So during the pre-seed phase, pretty obvious, you need some type of idea. What problem are you trying to tackle? You assemble a founding team and you find a really big market and a really big problem that you're solving. Then you raise a pre-seed round. Then you go on to the seed round. And in the seed round, you've come a bit further on your founding team. And what you do here is that you create a plan, and you might go to some potential customers and say, would you want this? And then they say, yeah, we would want this. And then you might onboard them as, for instance, design partners. And then you create, it's not a binding contract, but kind of like a handshake saying, yeah, if this exists, we're in. And that is a letter of intent or an LOI. And that happens usually around seed. Next round, the A round, you continue securing more LOIs. And here you start thinking about where, if you're building a factory, for instance, where would it be? Here and after that race, this is where the magic happens. Here, you start converting some of the letter of intents to real, almost like pre-order agreements, where you lock in demand, and these are called offtake agreements. And Northvolt was one of the first ones to kind of define this new playbook, where they created really nice offtake agreements with Volkswagen, with Scania early on, and then that made the case bankable, so you could continue building it. And the cool thing here is that when you've come this far and the case is bankable and you have the offtakes, you don't need to raise more dilutive capital from VCs like myself, but you can raise debt and you can find other pockets of capital. So I would say that's
there's the promise of the business.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's how the business or the journey, I would say, differs from software. But there are a lot of similarities as well.
But do you think there's a more kind of collaborative approach happening once you start talking about climate tech, once it's more kind of a save the world narrative to the business model? Because these are businesses. They're not like NGOs or anything trying to solve our biggest problems. It's actual technology that wants to be deployed and implemented in the marketplace. But do you think there's a different kind of collaborative aspect to it that it's available because of the climate aspect?
I would say that the general vibe in the climate tech ecosystem is more collaborative, and I think that comes from the notion of us knowing that we have some pretty big problems that we have to fix until 2030 and 2050. And we all have to go together and do this together. And in many cases, these companies work together. So you have one company creating the batteries, one company creating the electric vehicle, one company creating the software, and so forth. So yes, I would say so.
And I noticed many of the companies that you exemplify with here are your own investments, companies you engage with. There are some that I guess you're not engaged with. How come you decided to do this as a kind of external project? You mentioned it in the beginning, but why not only do this as an internal EQT kind of strategy about doing your own investment? Why is this important to kind of I sense that you want to do it because you want to advance the whole ecosystem, as you say.
No, exactly. So we decided early on that we did not want this to just be a marketing project or anything like that. This is a tool that we need, and we realized that more people need. So on the website, you have an open letter that is signed by, I think, more than 70 founders, investors, other entities, capital providers already now. This is run not as a kind of like a part of our everyday business. We're actually recruiting like a separate unit for this. More to come on that. But yes, it's a community project, partly financed by EQT Ventures, partly financed by Contrarian. McKinsey helped out, Northwind, Planet A lot of people helped out.
And how, just zooming out a little bit, looking at the market, since I have you here, there is a lot of talk in the past 12 to 18 months, I guess, about kind of a slowing market, companies having a difficulty finding capital. There's a kind of a slowness to it. How do you see the market right now, and how does this play into the climate investments?
I would say that if it's if it's AI, it's definitely not slow. Then it's happening in real
Just
time.
register a .ai domain and you're off to the races, right?
But if it's climate software, I would say it's the same. If it's climate with a hardware component, it's
Right.
I would say it's still very sought after, but it's cases that the way I think about it is that we can put a few bets into software companies and see if they work out, but you don't place a few bets into a climate hardware type company, because if it's like so much effort, so much IP, so many atoms going into something like this. So before deciding to back such a project, we really decide that we're in it for the long term. In software, it's already established like how it works. It's like someone is A, someone is a B, and so forth. In climate, you have to carry the weight for longer in climate hardware.
And out of all these 7 bricks, are there one or two that you are personally more excited about, that you're looking at more closely?
That's a good question. I'm bringing them up here on the screen. It's like asking you to name your favorite child. No, I mean, I personally, I really like the Moonshot brick. I think it's like a lot of interesting technologies on the drawing board there. But yeah, hard to say. I mean, building plants is also something that I think is maybe weird to say, but it's a bit sexy to build factories. I think we also have a large infrastructure fund at EQT. But yeah, I mean, all of them are there for a reason.
Traditionally, venture funds are not going into kind of physical investments like that. At least that's my understanding of the market. Usually VCs, you are a fairly big one. There are smaller ones also that more looking at the traditional software. Do you think VCs should be looking at more kind of quote unquote physical innovations?
I think in with this new playbook and with these how to say more clear steps, start with de-risking the technology, then make the case bankable, offtakes. I think there's a role for everyone around the table. So for early stage investors, you might go in and help build out the team, just like in a software startup. For slightly later stage startups, you might go in there and de-risk the technology, and then you serve it to the infrastructure or more mature climate tech investors as the case is becoming more and more bankable. So as an early stage investor, you don't have to wait out the whole journey. There are nice stations to jump on and jump off the bus.
And out of your situation as an investor or your everyday today life, you said that this was kind of a side project, developing this Climate Brick project. But how much of the companies that you're looking at are climate tech companies, and how much are more traditional venture companies?
So within EQT Ventures, I would say it's
Yeah.
roughly 1/4. We are
Mm-hmm.
one of the largest VCs, so we look at everything ranging from consumer to B2B to fintech to deep tech and hardware. In the team that I work in, the deep tech and hardware team, it's most of it. I also have a kind of a creative industries background, so I also look at some of those cases. But except for that, it's mainly deep tech and climate cases we look at.
All right, Ted. So at Scandinavian Mind, we've been quite focused on how new technology, specifically AI, is changing the creative industries. And I know you have a background in this as well, as you just mentioned. We are hosting an event, when people listen to this, we had hosted an event with one of your investments, Kive, which is an AI tool for visual creativity. Where do you see this landscape right now? I'm sure you are flooded with pitches of companies using AI or building chat GPTs on top of their existing business models. What's the kind of current state of affairs from a VC perspective? What are you listening to most?
First of all, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I have two roles here. I have the role of a techno optimist, investor, and then I also have the role of a domain expert who has worked in the creative industries for a long time. So I'm both on the side of the disruptor, and I'm also on the side of the disruptee, if you will. So from that perspective, it's beautiful and also challenging to see the industry that you kind of grew up in being disrupted.
Right.
It's beautiful because we're getting a whole new arsenal of tools, and it's so cool to see when you see the generative video models like Sora and Pika. You see the music models now with like Suno and it's like, wow, this is happening now, and it feels privileged. At the same time, I also have this sense of kind of like, yeah, the respect for the craft and how to say uniqueness turning into wallpaper, production quality not really mattering. But from that perspective, and also like a lot of the people creating these tools, they don't even have like creative people on board. And I think if they would have creative people on board, I think actually their journeys would be way faster, because as you know, it's like creativity is a combination of like a lot of different things, including trickery and craft and like chewing gum and like veneer or surface and stuff like that. But I think there will be like a new renaissance for or like there's always a pendulum. And I was thinking about, like, for instance, you remember when Netflix came about, and back when we grew up, if there was a TV show on Swedish TV that had high production value, everyone was watching that. That didn't matter what it was. High production value equal quality. Then cut to Netflix. Everything has high production value, but we know that that does not equal quality. We're not watching everything on Netflix. So I think it's the same thing. Like, everything will look amazing, but I think it's almost as if when everything looks amazing, the need for real human connecting the dots, something different that has not been seen before, will go up by far. And it's almost like, you know, when you had like the woodwork workshop in school when you were a kid, you created some very ugly knife or you were like creating a cat or something.
Yeah.
You made it. You made it, or if you
Yeah.
extend, a human made it. I think there is a notion of that in it. But I think it's absolutely fascinating to see, and also the speed that this is moving in. And I know you saw that Max Tegmark illustration of, it's just a couple of years old, when he had like a landscape, like a
Exactly. Yeah.
topography of a landscape, and saying the water was AI, and the higher up on the mountain tops, the longer it took, and on the highest top was design and kind of arts and stuff like that. And now it's almost one of the first things. So it's like the water is going the other way.
The water's flooding from the
the
skies.
water's flooding. There's like a sky full. No, I think it's fascinating. Super cool.
So what I think you kind of answered my next question, but I want to ask it again. What do you think is the role of a creative person, or in this kind of new landscape of new tools? What do we add to it when we have? What's the human creative element?
I mean, I think it's like being a director or being a conductor. I think if you strip away the job of a fashion designer or a creative director or a film director or something like that, it is a lot around vision and a lot around taste. And I think vision and taste. I think basically those two things. But but I think a lot of in some cases craft and vision are deeply intertwined. That's when it gets kind of interesting. And in some other cases, I've seen examples like back in the day when I was recruiting creatives, recruiting for designers and stuff like that. I looked at their portfolios and I'm seeing this idea. There's something very, very interesting in this idea, but the execution sucks. And imagine when you're giving the or firstly you can say, okay, who has like to it's okay not being able to craft something, but still to if you still put something in your portfolio that is not crafted beautifully, then it becomes a matter of taste maybe. But it's still interesting to see. Like imagine what happens when everyone has like a Pixar in your pocket, or like a whatever you have, like a pentagram grade design agency, and everyone can access it. What will happen then? New tools.
How much are you using the AI tools yourself? I know you create your own pitch decks quite a lot. You're very hands-on with your work. I'm
playing around with everything, and I try to put out like a Medium post for every new investment. And back a few years, I was doing some hobbyist Photoshop work, and now I'm using Crea.ai and all kinds of cool tools. And it's fascinating.
Good stuff. Well, I quite enjoy following your journey. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It's climagebrick.com, I believe, for those of you who wants to learn more. Ted Persson, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.